2. Gods and deities. Deities are common in myths. The ancient Egyptians had more than 2,000, and the Hindu people have 333 million. Deities can govern over water and the sun, as well as over individual objects. Mythological deities were viewed as limited, flawed, and driven by emotions and ambitions, like humans. The main difference between a deity and a person is that deities had more power and more ambition. The Jade Emperor. The supreme deity in Chinese mythology is the Jade Emperor, Wu Huang, or Yu Di. Some claim that he was the first god to exist. Others feel he was one of 3 supreme deities. One of his names even means superior emperor. The Chinese believed their emperors descended from a dragon god and were appointed by heaven. Early in China's history, emperors took the title Sons of Heaven. The Jade Emperor lived in the most beautiful place in the palace, or beautiful palace in the highest level of heaven. He had a long, wispy beard and wore a crown topped with a flat board hung with many multicolored strings of pearls. His robes were embroidered with imperial dragons, and he sat on a large throne. He was married to the heavenly empress, Queen Mother of the West, or Queen Mother Wang, who was young and beautiful, and was almost always accompanied by a peacock. In her garden she grew a magical peach tree that bore fruit once every 3,000 years. When the peaches ripened, she would host a banquet for the gods. The magic peaches gave the gods immortality. The Jade Emperor was the great organizer of the heavens and made order out of chaos. He ruled over a large bureaucratic network of lesser deities, both gods and goddesses, whose responsibilities included running the day-to-day events of Earth. Some deities ruled over nature and were in charge of lakes, rivers, and mountains. Some were patrons of particular professions, and others governed happiness, mercy, good fortune, and long life. Each minor deity had to report to his superior once a month, and to the Jade Emperor once a year. If a deity's conduct was unsatisfactory, he was dismissed and replaced by another. The Jade Emperor left ordinary affairs to his lower gods and retired to enjoy an immortal life. He had little to do with humans and did not pray, worship, and they did not pray, worship, or complain to him. This complicated structure in heaven actually imitated the real bureaucracy that existed in the Chinese emperor's imperial court. By the 3rd century BC, a ruling system based around the emperor and his officials was established. The emperor and his officials were the ones who made important governing decisions. There were also local officials who governed the provincial areas following the emperor's orders. As long as the emperor ruled justly, good things would happen to the Chinese people. But when crops failed and natural disasters occurred, emperors could be disposed of. If the emperor failed in his duties, he would lose the mandate of heaven and would be replaced by another nobleman who would begin a new dynasty. The 8 Immortals. People could relate to deities because they were once mortal and had problems and struggles that the ordinary person might encounter. When the deity had endured or experienced something that a person was experiencing, that person knew the deity understood the struggle. The pain was more bearable because it had meaning, or it was seen as suffering for a long cause, or for a larger cause. When myths tell about the activities and attitudes of deities, the moral is usually for the audience members to alter their own behaviors and standards. Chinese society also sees the reward and consequences of the deity's decisions. Most Chinese gods or deities were not divine in origin, but were literally men and women who had been deified after their deaths. Such deities were part of a group called the 8 Immortals. The 8 Immortals, who were of the Taoist tradition, were ordinary mortals who, through good works and lives, were rewarded by the heavenly Empress who gave them the peaches of everlasting life to eat. It is not clear why these 8 are seen together as a group. It is possible that they represent a cross-section of the population, from rich to poor, old man to youth, male and female, or indeterminate gender. The 8 Immortals became popular in the 13th and 14th century and have been seen in many works of art. There are many depictions of the 8 Immortals. The following represent a combination of many sources. Zhongli Quan. Zhongli Quan was a smiling, joyful old man with a careless air. He was rewarded with immortality for his frugal life in the mountains. His emblem is a fan of feathers, or the peach of immorality. He is representative of military personnel. Li Taiguai of the Iron Crutch. Li Taiguai of the Iron Crutch was a beggar and a healer who could revive the dead with his medicines. His emblems are an iron crutch and a gourd of life-preserving medicine, and are usually depicted on the fronts of pharmacies as he represents the ill. Lang Kehi was a young flute player, sometimes referred to as male and other times as female, who dressed in rags with one foot shod and the other bare. Lang Chehi's soul-searching songs caused a stork to snatch the musician away to heaven. His emblem is the flower or fruit basket, and he represents the poor. Lu Dongbin, a hero of early Chinese literature. Lu Dongbin punished the wicked and rewarded the good, like Robin Hood, and could kill dragons with a magic sword. He was born in 755 AD and died in 805 AD. He was a skillful fencer, and his sword could make him invisible. His emblem is the sword, and he represents scholars. Zhenggu was an aged deity who could work magic. He was known for his donkey that could travel great distances extremely fast and fold up like a piece of paper. He lived in 7th and 8th century AD. His magical gifts are believed to bring fertility to young couples. His emblem is a paper horse, and he represents the old. Hang Jiangxi was a scholar who chose to study magic rather than prepare for the civil service. It was also said that he was taken to the top of the immortalizing peach tree and dropped off, attaining immortality as he descended. His emblem is a flute, and he represents the cultured classes. Cao Guju tried to reform his corrupt brother, an emperor, by reminding him that the laws of heaven are inescapable. His emblem is the court writing tablet, and he represents the nobility. He Zhenggu, the immortal maiden. He Zhenggu appears only to men of great virtue. She was a Cantonese girl who dreamed she could become immortal by eating a powder made from mother of pearl. Born in 700 AD in Canton or Guangdong, her emblem is a lotus, and she represents unmarried girls. The myth of the 8 immortals. The 8 immortals were close friends who traveled and had many adventures together. One time, the heavenly empress threw her party, which she threw once every 3,000 years. And after the party, the 8 immortals decided they could not ride home on the clouds as they usually did. This one time they crossed the seas instead. They all floated safely on the waters on magic rafts. One of the immortals, by the name of Lang Kahi, was playing a magic flute as she floated on her raft. The son of the dragon king, who lived under the sea, sucked Lang Chehi under the water to steal her flute. The other 7 immortals demanded the release of Lang Chehi. Otherwise, they were going to destroy the place of the dungeon of the Dragon King. The sun refused, and the great battle began. The immortals lit huge fires, and the flames and heat burned the seas dry. The immortals rescued Lang Chehi, but she wanted to find her flute. Time was running out as the Dragon King's warriors were quickly pouring back waters to replenish the sea basin. The immortals made it to land and used all their strength and anger to topple an enormous mountain into the sea so it would not be able to hold any more water. The battle was not over yet. Eventually, the son of the Dragon King was killed and the magic flute was found. The Jade Emperor sent his heavenly guards down to make peace between the Dragon King and the 8 immortals. The fight finally stopped. The Chinese mythology. Human beings who achieved renown in their earthly lives were transformed into gods and continued their activities in heaven. Heaven was the dwelling place of most of the gods. Each god had his or her own place, and heaven was divided into many levels. The gods with the most seniority, such as the Jade Emperor, lived closer to the top. The Chinese had many different types of gods. Each of these gods was looked upon and regarded with the utmost of respect. The sun, moon, and thunder gods were gods of nature, and the Chinese people knew their very lives depended on the unpredictable elements of nature. The gods were part of the day-to-day living of the Chinese. There was the god of literature, Wen Cheng, and the god of examination, Jing. Wen Cheng had assistants, one being Red Jacket, who even protected students who were not prepared for examinations. There is a story about a young man who had written an essay but was not satisfied with it. The student prayed for intervention from the gods. While asleep, the student had a dream where he saw the god throwing a number of essays into a stove. When the god took them out of the stove, the essays were completely altered. When the student awoke, he heard that a fire had indeed occurred and had destroyed the building where all the essays were stored. He got the opportunity to rewrite the essay. The gods had protected him. Of course, one wasn't always protected by the gods. If that were the case, everyone would get A's all the time. The Chinese had a great variety of gods that served many purposes. There were gods who took care of humankind, like the hearth god and door god. Even today, you will see painted on the outer doors of Chinese houses two soldiers, one with the red face or blank face and the other with the white face. With a red or black face and the other with the white face. These are the door gods. They are there to keep away evil spirits. One very popular god that people still offer sacrifices to on his birthday is the god of wealth. Kei Xin. There are also gods peculiar to each social class and profession. Even to this day, people wear talismans, or magical charms to fend off evil spirits. They may hang a picture of Zhong Qi, the guardian against evil spirits, to ward off diseases. Children carry silk pouches to ward off evil. Whatever the occasion in one's life, there was a god to be either thankful to or from whom to request something. Zhong Qi, god of healing. China was well known for practicing its ancient craft of medicine. Medicine men and surgeons were well respected. Zhong Qi was an apprentice doctor. Centuries ago, he studied medicine, but the emperor at the time would not allow him to practice medicine. Zhong Qi was so upset that he committed suicide right at the entrance of the palace. The emperor had a dream that he was being attacked by a demon, and Zhong Qi drove it off. When he awoke, the emperor made Zhong Qi a god and named him the great spiritual chaser of demons in the empire. Today, his painted image is created with frightening away demons and ghosts. Zhengnong, god of Agriculture and medicine. Zheng Nong, divine farmer, was a kind of generous god. His head appeared like an ox, and he had the body of a human. As the population increased in the world, the food sources started to become scarce. Zheng Nong taught people how to work their land to get crops. As he was teaching the people, many grain seeds fell from the sky. He taught the people how to sow the seeds into plowing fields. He made the sun give enough heat and light for the crops to grow. Zheng Nong became the holy farmer of the god of agriculture. He was also considered the god of medicine. It is reported that he had a magic red whip, which he used on herb plants. With his expertise, he could tell whether a plant was poisonous. He used herbs to cure the illness of the people in China. In order for Zheng Nong to know what the herbs could do to the people, he ingested them himself. It was said that he was transparent, and if he tasted an herb that was poisonous, he would see which part of the body was affected and then eat another herb as the antidote. It was said that one day he was poisoned 70 times. He eventually succumbed to one poisonous herb, possibly the 100-legged vermin plant. He was known to have sacrificed himself so humans would know how to take care of themselves medically. As a god, he was also known for teaching people how to farm, treat illnesses, make farming tools, create pottery, and create the calendar. It's no surprise that the Chinese would look at a god to help them in agriculture and medicine. Agriculture was the basis of Chinese society. Farming life in China was hard. Farmers would toil in the fields from dusk till dawn. They lived very difficult lives. A large portion of what they earned, unfortunately, was given to their landlords and to pay their taxes. Peasants in the rural areas were worse off than those in the urban areas, and their positions did not improve much over thousands of years. Plants were not only used as food sources, but were used in medicines. Many traditional Chinese medicine recipes are thousands of years old and are still being used today. Traditional Chinese medicine is based on the belief that humans and their environment form a balanced whole, and any disturbance to that balance can cause illness. Doctors use pressure points, massage, herbal medicines, and breathing techniques to balance the energy in the body. They also use acupuncture, which involves inserting fine needles into certain parts of the body to cure pain and disease and to improve health. It is believed that by inserting these needles into certain points of the body, the yin and yang, the qi, or life flow, can flow freely. That's the end of 2, Gods and Deities, Chinese Mythology, a book by Sandra Giddens and Owen Giddens.